Let's proceed to the exciting and adventurous great HR debate. AI, a tool for business value creation or disruption. And now I hand it over to our moderator, Dr. Tanaya Mishra, member HRM Committee, Bombay Chamber, and Global CHRO in Solution Global Limited. And over to you, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Shakespeare said, to be or not to be. And welcome all of you to the much awaited session on the HR debate. Is AI a value creation or a disruption? This is going to mean your brain cells have to work, because I'm going to ask you questions because you have to take a side. But to help me moderate the session, I have my co-moderator, Lucky Kulkarni. Come on up, Lucky.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
So you want to call all up esteemed panels on stage, please? Yes.
So may I request our esteemed panelists to kindly come on the dais. Rita. So Rita is the CHRO.
Please welcome on stage.
She is a Chief Talent Officer for Omnicon. We have with us Harsha. She's a VP India Consulting Hub Lead Wipro.
She's also a geek, by the way, and if you can give her something, she'll go to code it. She was on the board, which she was with Bhaskar, who was on the Exco of Accenture, and she worked very closely with him.
We have with us Sarita. Sarita, the CHRO for GOBP. And Dr. Prashant Nair, the CHRO, Crompton Greaves, Consumer Electric Division.
Well, actually, I know them a little better. I know Prashant is an entrepreneur himself. He started Zing HR. He was with Thomas Cipla. I know Sarita as well. Sarita has been with HDFC and now with BP. And I was quite impressed. We just got to know Harsha and realized we worked in the same organization. Okay, so here are some of the questions. Lucky, maybe you can go up on stage. I'll join you. So, ready to pick sides? And we also have a young entrepreneur. I don't see him, so we're going to have a Gen Z as well. Okay. So, in your opinion, is artificial intelligence really a value or a disruption? Hands up, please. Yes, is it a value or is it a disruption? Is it a boon or a bane? Yes, value creator.
Value creator, of course. Value creator, of course. Because it's a major tool which is changing the technological disruption that the industry is facing, and it's facing so because that's where the entire world is moving to.
Okay, go on. Challenge him, come on.
Actually, I'm just adding to it. I believe that it's a co-pilot, like was mentioned before, and it's a huge benefit to humankind.
Okay, come on, youngster, you have to help me. I need some people.
I'll agree with both of them. I will also say that it is a value creator, and the most important part of it being a value creator is using it the right way, which is what people have to learn.
Okay, so which of one of you think it's going to be a disruption, and which of you think it's a bane? Nobody? Anybody? Disruption for sure. Yes. Why?
I feel like AI is bringing in a thing where a lot of people running companies are able to scale faster because you don't need that many people to make the decisions anymore. Then you build something and it scales. So I feel like the more you use AI, especially the world's going through AI native. That's a new word now, AI native. Every company wants to be AI native, and I feel that's kind of what is going to really build a lot of profitable businesses in the future as well.
So thank you very much. So as we go on, so Lucky is going to take up the bane part of it, or the disruption part of it, and I'm going to take on the boon part of it. Okay, so here, over to you, Lucky.
So friends, I understand a lot of you feel that AI is a value creator. Yes, of course it is. But there's another side to it too. That is a disruption side. Today, friends, India has a huge workforce. Now AI has come into picture. They are working very fast. They are moving very fast. Imagine how will we deploy the workforce when AI is already taken over? This is one question that we need to understand. Friends, AI has moved from lab to our daily life, and we all are often using it. Now AI is, we have 153,000 agents ready to be deployed. Now these AI are moving fast. They've created their own language. They've created their own religion called Christophrim. 43 prophets already joined. They are creating a language which only they can understand. Humans cannot read. And this is just the beginning. So friends, let's explore the positive side of it and also the negative side of it. Over to you, Tanaya.
Okay, so if you look at today, guess what's the overall net value of the world today, world economy? Any guesses? $117.2 trillion. In the background is also the geopolitical era where there is so much that's happening. With this, we have generative AI, we have agentic AI. I have my colleagues from ISG who are also working with IBM. I have Pareen and I have Hina. They're working with AI on the Bob. They're working on Orchestrate. So I have the first question to Harsha. Harsha, in your view, define the parameters or broad matrices of AI in the world today.
Okay. I'm sitting squarely in the AI as a boon. I'll perhaps start with my background. I'm a student of psychology. And 25 years ago, as you can think, when you talk about BA as a career, your parents aren't too happy, right? Over the years, I've worked in the HR domain area. But when the last 7 years I've been working in the field of data and AI, that's completely catapulted my career in a trajectory which is absolutely progressing. So I just want to emphasize that when you're talking about AI, it's a tool, or any technology for that matter, the ability to shift gears, it really gives you a tremendous trajectory over there. Now coming back to your question in terms of the parameters in which we look at AI, right? Oftentimes the ROIs associated are in terms of productivity gain. For example, how many roles, how many FTE savings, how can you do things faster, cheaper, better. That's a very measurable, tangible way in which you look at it. But at the same time, there are various intangibles as well. Because of the advent of AI, AI and computer vision is able to also help us in monitoring child trafficking. I worked on a study with IIT Mumbai where because of AI, we are able to do crop insurance management better. There's a lot of ecosystem evolution that we can also do when you're using the technology well before. And I really applaud the gentleman, the young man sitting there, who spoke about responsible AI as well. It also helps us, even as HR colleagues, systematically make sure that DEI agenda is also supported. So we're talking about parameters. You've got the measurable, the tangible ones. You've got intangible ones as well. So there are plenty. I think the role that we as business leaders need to do is think of it from a multi-lens and make sure for your organization, because different organizations and industries work differently, make sure that you're pacing it for your industry and for your organization.
Prashant, we'll start from you. Do you think AI is a disruption?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the question. Actually, I'll take the audience back to 1945 or something. And there was a scientist by the name of Oppenheimer. Okay. Oppenheimer was considered to be the father of the nuclear bomb. Okay. And he went to Truman, who decided to bomb Japan. And Oppenheimer told him that my hand is full of blood. So Truman replied to him, take the hanky and rub it off. My hand is completely dipped in blood. Why I'm telling you the story is, this inspired somebody called Mrinal Sharma. Mrinal Sharma is an Indian. He is working in OpenAI and Anthropic. And he resigned about in Feb 26. And he was a safety and governance specialist of the AI firm. And his resignation letter had one line, the world is in peril. Okay. Fast forward 2 weeks, Anthropic were talking to the US government of defense. And they wanted a tool that could completely have a war, declare a war, fight a war, and Anthropic had the tools. They walked away from the tool. They said that they will not get into an agreement with the Department of Defense. Okay. For autonomous machines and wars, they are not willing to put their stake. And he quoted this example of Oppenheimer at that time. Why I'm talking about this is that while AI has a lot of positives, and I remember the Sanskrit word called pratipaksham. Pratipaksham means opposite, and there's a word called sat pratipaksham. I'm a great votary of AI, so it's very difficult for me to argue against AI. But having said that, I will try my best. And the key part to the question is that it can add a lot of value, but it's like a Bhasmasur. Bhasmasur is an asura that was created by Shiva. Okay? And Shiva said that whatever the desire for Bhasmasura was that I will touch any person's head and that person will get exhausted and the person will die. And Bhasmasura went up and told that Shiva, I am going to touch you. And Shiva started to run. AI is like Bhasmasura. We have created a tool. In the words of Geoffrey Hinton, who is the grandfather of AI, he said that this is the first time we are having technology which is more intelligent than human beings, and human beings do not know how to deal with species which is more intelligent than human beings. So I rest my case. We will come to the second question when I get a chance. Thank you.
Okay, this one's for you, Rita. So I was just with one of my very senior colleagues, and he was saying that let's replace warm bodies with cold bots. Okay? So in your view, how do you think AI is really creating the value creation that we're looking for?
Hello? Yeah. So I think we've heard such interesting conversations and debates today, and for me to really put the point across, when I was hearing the conversations, I remember maybe a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, when, someone would present something and, you would say, oh, I think this person has used ChatGPT. And we would look down at that person. Today, suddenly, it's actually the different thing, right? When we say, oh, that person has used ChatGPT or Copilot, and there is that thing saying, oh, this person is really smart. That's basically the value creation, which, I would say AI has transformed in the last 1 to 2 years, because the same thing where we would say that, oh, that person is really not, using their brains. We are like, oh, this person is really smart because they're using AI and it is actually creating value creation. So, I kind of started with that because it is a mindset which I myself have, kind of gone through. And it's also quite interesting because, when I think I get into the workplace, the conversations right now are all about, okay, what did we do with AI? What is the new thing which we have done, right? We've got workforces who are actually much smarter than us when it comes to using AI, and the generation we are in, we are just trying to still understand that, oh, okay, can AI be used in terms of value creation? But definitely it can. And I think from the HR standpoint, one, it has to be a total cultural shift which the organizations have to create when we are talking about the value creation, because it is there. There is no hiding or running away from that. But again, how does the culture transformation happen in organizations to use AI to the benefit, in all the fields, right? Because the kind of speed in which today decisions can be taken because of AI, the ROI in terms of, because you're getting data at the click of a button, But how is the cultural shift happening in the organizations, in leadership, especially when again you have, generations in an organization? That is something which we are working towards, and that's the value creation which we are seeing every day, because today everybody is talking about AI, and proudly we say, oh, by the way, I did this and I used Copilot. So that's the value creation. And of course, I mean, there are things in terms of, the efficiency, in terms of how we're using data, the way, the workflows are changing, and, again, how does this entire shift happen in the organization? That's the value creation very clearly, which, AI is bringing in. And I mean, I'm sitting in the middle, so I think it works for me that I see value creation by the disruption AI is going to be causing in.
Sarita, you have worked with multiple vertical companies like IT, FMCG, then telecom, insurance. You also worked with multi-generations. What do you think about AI as a bane?
Thanks, Lucky. Good afternoon, everyone. Very excited to listen to the pros and cons in this debate and share the con side of the story. Like Prashant said, it becomes difficult to be on the bane side when you believe in the power of AI. But I think there are a lot of conversations on the bane side of also the story, which I'm pretty excited to kind of share. Prashant, you spoke about Bhasmasur, and when I got this topic, and Dr. Tanaya, we spoke about it, the first thing that popped in my head when, we said, okay, let's kind of represent the bane side, was the movie Terminator, 1984. I'm sure almost all of us have seen it. And for me, that was like a classic example of how something that starts as a value creator ends up becoming a value disruptor or a destructor if not used in the right spirit, with the right governance, and with the right guardrails in place. And we all know the story. Skynet was formed for enabling the entire defense ecosystem. Eventually, Skynet realizes in the movie that humans are a threat and starts eliminating the human race one by one. And while the movie has its own lovely cinematography and use of tech in the 1984s, for me, it just set a very different thought on the importance of having the right guardrails, having the right frameworks, having the right governance metrics to ensure that a value creator does not become a disruptor. And if this is missing, then productivity enhancement or time consumption, cost reduction, which are sometimes the key priorities of organizations today for leaning onto AI, and of course it's a great productivity tool, it can be misused also, like the way in Terminator, where at the end, the human race was only getting destroyed.
My next question is to you, Harsha. In organizations, everybody wants to know return on investment, productivity matrices. I can even hear my promoter actually saying, okay, Dr. Mishra, what's the productivity matrices? And then we'll go scurrying, So really, on artificial intelligence, what do you think is the return on investment?
Let me start by sharing that I firmly believe that human resilience we're very resilient as a race. And I'll come to your answer, right? We have seen through, when, the man created fire, we went through the Industrial Revolution, we went through wars, we went through so many different eras, if you will. We went through the tech space, the Y2K, and now this is the AI, if you will, right? Over the time, we have become increasingly efficient as a generation, if you will. In terms of ROI as well, I think we're becoming more and more efficient. Like if you look at it, right, when we fought diseases, we have brought relative peace into the world. We're also figuring out how we are able to be more efficient when it comes to the workforce, etc. The point I'm making is we as the HR fraternity, we know the path. I think where we are right now is we are figuring out how the balance would look like. And this is, like my colleague here mentioned, that this disruption, I do agree, disruption sometimes is a very good thing. It forces you to have a different perspective. And as leaders of business, where we are in the age of AI, it's allowing us to have a outside-in perspective to say, okay, now how do I look at this evolution that we're looking through? And hence, what should be the ROI or the determinant of to what extent do I need to go? I completely believe that going one way or the other is not going to help you. And most organizations, my clients and my organization, are taking a very balanced perspective. So to answer your question with regards to return on investment, yes, when you talk about AI, it starts with the productivity enhancement. But I still see the change in which our clients and our company is talking about how do we elevate the human experience? How do we elevate the role? So as HR professionals, the job enrichment part, right? If I were to quote Satya Nadella, let's take the drudgery out of work so that you're able to focus on important topics such as customer experience, delighting your employees from an engagement perspective, etc. So when I sit with my clients and talk about what are the key parameters of ROI, yes, we do talk about how do you look at productivity gain, but you also talk about how do you delight your customers. And I'll give an example. One of my customers in Australia, from a customer service rep, when you call for a credit card, say your credit card is stolen, today technology has the power to record that conversation using NLP. And as the person is speaking, pop-ups come in. So if the person's voice is distressed, you can actually see that, oh, looks like the person's lost the credit card. Prompt and say this so that the person can be, assuaged, or you can pacify the person. Or if the person is looking for a data point, as the person speaks, the AI can prompt and tell you, okay, this person is asking you for this particular information. You don't have to go search. So the call, the ability for a customer rep to take the call faster, more economically, and also delight the customer experience has gone up. That's the real value. It's in terms of how do you elevate the human role. So yes, it starts with productivity, but these elevations are what clients and customers are looking for. And I'd like to also share an experience with my company, Wipro. We take a lot of pride in being an AI-powered company. For example, north of 70% of the L1, the first round of interviews we take, are with a bot. Right? It's AI powered, and of course when people join the call, the person knows that, with their consent, they're able to interview with a bot. And honestly, people love it, especially the younger lot, if you will. They then know that, yes, I'm working with an AI first company, because the first round of interaction itself is with that. The interview gets summarized, the notes come in, the keywords that were highlighted helps the evaluation process also get streamlined. So I think that we are increasingly working in a world where the ROI is moving beyond productivity through the elevation of experiences. I hope that answers your question.
So as I understand with the conversation that the purpose of AI is the ROI, how much we can encash with, and what is going to be the profit of the company based on, deploying the AI. But it has been seen people who have been deploying AI haven't been profitable. Prashant, what is your take in that?
First, let me add to what Harsha is saying. In fact, slightly a different point of view. Okay, previously in technology, we had this garbage in, garbage out. Have you heard about that? Garbage in, garbage out. Okay. In AI, it is bias in, bias out. Okay, and I'll give you a simple example. You go to Gemini or whatever tool you want and just say that, get me a watch diagram, watch picture. Invariably, it will show a 10-10. Because the data that has been fed in, all the images in the net shows the watch at 10:10. Even if you say 6 p.m. time, it will actually, there's a high probability that it will actually show 10:10. Same thing, cricket, if you're interested in cricket, draw me a batsman, it will actually show a right-handed batsman and not a left-handed batsman. So with all the billions of data input that is getting in, we need to be extremely careful about the bias that the system will throw up, especially in the interview stage. Okay, that's one aspect to it. Second is, from an organization point, I think we are not very far off from the time when we would need to be very clear, saying that why is this job really required? Can't it be done by AI? Okay, that leads to huge productivity improvement, no doubt about it. AI doesn't get tired. AI doesn't need work-life balance. AI doesn't need 9 to 5 with 2 breaks in between. AI doesn't need coffee breaks. But what will be the impact in an organization point of view? What's the differentiation point of an organization? Then organizations will be alike. So what kind of world would this be in? What will happen to people? What will happen to organizations? Okay. And typically, from a technical point of view, any investment in AI will follow a J curve. Okay, and there is a famous rule which is says 30-30. So, which says that 30% of your system should attain 30% of the maturity for AI to show return. Okay, 30% of your system should attain 30% of maturity for AI systems to actually show the return. Now, the question is, from a quarter se quarter tak paradigm, are we prepared for that? Okay, in our youth we saw a QSQT picture, Qayamat se Qayamat tak. Today we are all fighting quarter se quarter tak, right? So from that point, are the organizations willing for the ROI? From productivity point, I don't have the slightest of doubt productivity will come. But what that productivity leads to, is it the most effective way of using AI? I don't have an answer to that. And that's where I would say, be careful about where you use AI and what purpose would AI serve in the organization. And maybe today or tomorrow, we may not be in control of it.
Great. This looks like a scientific movie horror story where I can actually see agents running amok, okay? Because we've moved from generative to agentic and now to adjunct, right? So in this fear of what is going to happen, my question to you, Rita, is how do you think we can have ethical HR practices to adopt AI? Because if we don't plan now, the future, like quarter se QSQT, I like that quarter se quarter tak, how do we ensure that we are ready?
So I think, again, the starting point is that this is, it is there. We cannot hide away from it, right? So now how are we really looking at organization policies, way of working, workflows, etc., using the base saying that we need to use AI? I think that is the starting point for it, because when you know that there is no running away from it and, it is going to be used, you need to kind of create policies around that. And which is why, again, to the point, the cultural shift of organizations have to happen. You need to design your training programs, which is not discouraging people. We have to encourage people to use AI, but again, in the so-called lines of, the ethical use of AI. And again, over there, the use of data, the data privacy is going to be, quite important. The biggest threat, I think, when we use AI is obviously in terms of, how is data going to be used, or how is data going to be, kind of shared outside. And I think a policy on data ethics is important. Most of our organizations have obviously adopted, AI. We have, like Copilot is something which we use, and that is driven globally. There are, again, training programs basis that there, again, we've been told that you have to use AI, and this is the tool which you want to use. So I think that is the beauty of it. And again, the ethical part of it is, transparency around the use of it, because it's about saying people that you need to use it, but this is how you need to do it. There are disclaimers, right? Today, even clients are absolutely okay with us using AI, but they would want, a disclaimer to go. So transparency when you're using it internally and externally is important. The use of, again, the platforms, what is the kind of platform you're using, that should be disclosed. And also training across levels to say, okay, how is it that we want to use it in our day-to-day? And what kind of workflows are going to change using AIs is something which we again have to bring in. So the entire, the learning development piece on focusing on the best use, the ethical use of AI is something which we, kind of need to drive in terms of that.
So I heard Harsha mentioning that, the bots are conducting interviews. And a lot of people are doing that. But there's another side to it too. Even candidates are having their own bot. So there was a situation when a bot was questioning and the candidate's bot was answering. Where are we leading to with this? So taking that in mind, what is happening to what is the impact of the employee engagement and employee connect in this bot world?
So Lucky so rightly said, and I'm sure most of us in HR would have kind of really had to ump our ante on the proctored tests, because you do have a lot of use of technology, even from the candidate side. Before I move to the connect and the engagement piece, we spoke about the whole hiring element, and Harsha, agree with you that it has, of course, raised the productivity and lowered the tax also, helped build quality. But we all know about, failed cases also, and the Amazon one being the very, very famous one. As an HR professional, it kind of was a used Bible for us when at my earlier organization, we decided to really leverage technology, AI, machine learning for the hiring process. So in Amazon, I think when they rolled AI in there and integrated it in their hiring tool, and of course, data biases do crop up, what you mentioned, Prashant. They realized that the 10-year hiring data that was fed on to the system brought out one stark outlier. And in the tech world, many years ago, it was a male-dominated industry at the start. So the AI actually read the right profile to be a profile who's a male rather than a woman, and started screening out women profiles. Even on the CVs, when the AI was reading it, if there are sentences like was a part of the women's football team or was a president of the women's chess club, the tool rejected these profiles because the tool assumed the bias and hence the data bias that only men can be successful in the tech industry. Yeah, and after a lot of deliberation, lot of R&D, Amazon actually scrapped the tool. Because a lot of data biases basis historical evidence that was fed in. We have looked at a lot of listening tools. We've looked at a lot of employee sentiment tools to bring out insights. And absolutely spot on, Harsha, when you said the analysis time and the quality that, let's say, our HR team would do versus the output that comes up at a snap of a button, there's a vast difference to it. But my question out post that is, what do you do with the data? Yeah, and if we do not responsibly use the data, it just becomes one good to have, this is what we launched kind of an initiative, rather than really bringing the right business value to the tool. And at least me and my team, we faltered in really bringing the right business value at the start, and initially then changed course. I also feel for a lot of these employee engagement and connect AI tools, we sometimes forget the employee fatigue that comes into when we talk of sustainability of the data inputs. And that's another point that I just want to lay on the table. So something that gets launched, yes, from a proof of concept, from a used case, from really getting it up and running, saving cost, improving quality insights, improving productivity, it's all out there. How do you enable the sustained use of quality insights to deliver business value? Because at the end of the day, it is about delivering business values. I think we still got a long way to go in terms of that space. Thank you.
So this one is to Harsha. Harsha, if you remember, Pierre, our chairperson, used to say in the new, and used to talk about agile organizations, and always about innovation and innovation hub. So in your opinion, while, it's not one day that you just wake up and say, I'm going to innovate something, right? So when you speak about innovation, how do you think organizations, are they firstly willing to pick up innovations, since it's so difficult, where the entire piece of change is so difficult, right? So how do you think, organizations are embracing innovation, and are they really embracing innovation, or is it old wine in new bottles?
No, I think great question. I spoke about human resilience, right? And innovation is a very important aspect. In both my current organization and clients, innovation is a theme. It's a funded area, right? Both in terms of spirit and in terms of money, where customers are making really good progress. The one thing I want to talk about before innovation is the factor of psychological safety and fail fast and fail forward. Since we're talking about the area of AI, it's very important we understand and appreciate it. Somewhere there's a belief that you have to keep going and you have to keep rising. To have innovation, it's very important that you take a failure in stride and have the next level, right, going forward. So that's very important. So that culture, I think, Rita, you alluded to it. And, yes, there will be failures. The bias that you mentioned, it's very real. But I'll also mention that the first version of ChatGPT versus right now is very different. So we have to teach and train the models. So innovation will happen when you keep progressing over it. What I've seen is organizations are funding innovations in different ways. For example, from an AI front, I've seen many, for example, supply chain, you've got an innovation fund, you can come up with the use cases and then show, how you're progressing over it. There's a lot of collaboration that is happening, and I would strongly encourage it. I had the pleasure of collaborating with Stanford, MIT, where I've learned some of the best things and passed it back to my organization. So big tip, please make sure you're connecting with some educational or a learning body so that they can be a two-way street, because they have the brains and we have the funding, if you will, so that relationship works very well. And also having encouragement in terms of career tracks. Some things which I've seen in definitely the consulting industry, but potentially in clients as well, right, is having a group of people who are innovative thinkers, because you need different schemas and personas in an organization. So from an HR perspective as well, it's important that you incentivize having think pods and you actually fund some roles who actually are thinking more from an innovation lens.
So we are using AI in business to improve customer experience. Similarly, we are using AI in the organization to improve employee experience. But is it really happening, Prashant? Or is it increasing surveillance instead?
Okay, so where I stand and what I'm going to speak is slightly different. I believe it's a great tool to actually improve employee experience, from the fact that a lot of people will tell you this fact that there is a value-added part of a job and there is a non-value-added part of job, and AI can easily take over the non-value-added part of the job, so that you focus on the creativity part, the real value add that a human can bring in. So that is an obvious advantage. Okay. But let's not forget the fact that if AI were to come into the workplace, right, your privacy, what's happening to your privacy? Okay, you are tracked. You are a data point. The moment AI is a co-pilot, the moment AI works with you, you are a data point which is tracked. And I recently talked to an HR head of a firm which is a 11 billion firm which is into security services, and this is based in Bangalore with a global I'll tell you the name of the firm. It's in Palo Alto, and there it's a very high level of automation. At level 2 till the interview round number 2, it's completely automated. Okay, the challenge is you are given a stack ranking of 1, 2, 3 candidates, and then the human takes a decision on which one to take. Human can take 3, but he needs to justify. And that is tracked over time. Now, you decide, good or bad. I'm not saying that. I'm not a person to give a judgment on that time. Neither should we give a judgment on that. But it creates its own pluses, it creates its own minuses. If you are tracked, and people are intelligent, I think you said very rightly, human beings are one of the most resilient and one of the most jugadu people, right, as a trait. We can go around. There's a word called work slop. If I'm tracked 24 hours, I do know how I can game the AI. That's also happening in the organizations. There's a resume slop, which means that I can prepare a resume so that I can actually make my resume more attractive to an AI bot. Okay? All this is happening in the world today. By a count in IT companies, the 60 to 70% of the resumes are actually having problem of resume slop. Okay. Now, I personally created a tool which could actually identify at an individual level the probability of attrition. Okay, in my earlier organization avatar. And it could actually tell me with certain amount of probability about, we could get it about 60 to 70%, that among 3 people in my team, what is the probability of attrition? Good, great. It increases productivity, maybe helps retention. But it needs the manager maturity to take that in the right spirit. If both of us are candidates and you come to know my probability of quitting is high, you can actually start discriminating me without me having anything to do with it. So for every plus there is a minus, and that's where I think it's very important when we create AI, like what a lot of organizations are doing, is that creating an AI charter, saying what are the do's and don'ts. And one of the very powerful do's that have come in is that keep the human in the loop. Do not have human out of the loop system, which is possible technically. You can actually have human out of the loop system, human in the loop system, in which judgment and decision ultimately needs to be taken by human. And there are gateways and guardrails which says that this process or this tool will be used and this tool will not be used. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
I think by and large you're there.
In fact, Lucky, I just want to add, you made a very relevant piece and a point that AI looks at even human beings as a data point. And we all know about the famous Cambridge Analytica case, right? Where a very unseemingly simple survey of Know Your Digital Life was used as data points of all the people who filled that survey on Facebook, which is now Meta. And because of the then prevailing not so great privacy laws, not only the person who filled the survey, but even the friends in the Facebook ecosystem of the person who filled the survey, their likes, dislikes, shares, forwards were analyzed, and a data set of 87 million users was kind of analyzed to then have very targeted communication by analyzing psychological profiles of people. If I'm an anxious person, communication targeted using fear psychosis was used. If you're an open-minded person, a more liberal format of communication was used to kind of change the narrative you want in your own way. And that, I think, is a very, very scary state of how AI can actually be used, misused, manipulated, and the outcomes then become really disastrous.
3 things, 3 data points. Who are your friends or who are your connects? What you like and what you dislike, and what you buy and don't buy, can tell me fairly well about you as a person, Lucky.
Something to worry or be happy about? Think about it.
Okay, so my last question to Rita. So you see, it's like water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. So you have generative AI, adjunct AI, agentic AI. So, you know, we are in different stages in organizations. So what do you think are some of the challenges that you are seeing as AI is coming into being?
I think one, of course, we've heard, you know, especially I think from a recruitment standpoint and, you know, hearing the bot conversation, it obviously kind of makes you question, right, that you are trying to adapt it, but, you know, what are the challenges which we'll face, right? But again, and, you know, to the point again of, you know, information being shared, I think the time you pick up your phone is when actually all your information is anyway all over the place, right? So that's a reality. We can't live without our phones. So we have to live with our data being shared, and we have to live with AI as a tool for which we are, you know, we are kind of doing things. So I think the important bit over here is, you know, again, how are we defining the organization, you know, with different standpoints? Are we really changing our workflows, or is it just, again, a conversation in the organization? Some people using, some people not. I don't think that would really help. It has to be a total, you know, cultural shift. It has to become a way of working. We have to see how we are using it in each and every department, because again, using it only in specific ones will not really help. It has to be an overall change in terms of what we are doing. And also how are, employees looking at it from an internal standpoint and an external standpoint. So, when we're seeing internal standpoint, again, things like, to the point of, again, an employee engagement survey. Do you really need to have elaborate surveys, or do you have to check, the pulse at a given point of time, saying that, okay, how does everyone feel at the moment, right? And that's where you get the data point. But what do you do with the data? If it's not tied up with an outcome, the tiredness to which some of you did mention definitely will seep in. Otherwise, we will just keep on talking about trying to do different things, surveys, but are we really taking action against that? So an entire conversation with the data coming in and action taking is something we have to see. Again, from a client standpoint, when we are looking at workflows changing externally, how are we sharing information with clients? How is the entire data analytics being used? Again, the action being taken is going to be important. And those conversations with the data input and the outcome, which is humanized, has to be seen, and that has to be regularized. Now, what happens, I think, in a lot of times is that the conversations are just left with saying that, okay, this was the data. But what was done after that? Are we really sitting and analyzing and telling somebody that, okay, you're very good at getting some information in, but what are the ways in which you can challenge that is something which we really need to kind of, also train in our people. The other last bit is, for me, it's very simple, saying that what is it that I will bring into the table where the generational workforce, which is the Gen Zs, which we've started talking about, feel that, okay, that's something which, is something different. This is something which is helping us with the data we have. We have to challenge ourselves. And also, I think, the last bit, which I think somebody mentioned in the last panel, when we are, very soon, I think these panel discussions is also going to become, it will be on an open AI, where we'll be talking about, okay, what is it that we can do, and you will have different viewpoints. And maybe these discussions will not happen in this, in the similar manner. But it is about the value add, which we all as HR leaders, as leaders of organizations who have to bring in with the information we get. That's how, things will really change.
Okay, so since Sanjay started this trend, I also thought of, in the last minute, inviting a Gen Z CEO. May I please welcome on stage Joshua Salin, the CEO of Hobby Tribe, a Gen Z, right? 26-year-old? Okay. Yes, what do you think of what is being spoken of? Please, here. And you can, 5 minutes for questions, maybe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mishra, for inviting me here. It's such an honor to be here. I feel like Johanna and I are kind of like the Gen Z representatives to be here. But AI is a very interesting, topic. I feel like in my own company as well, we are sort of using AI a lot in our day-to-day life, because I feel the seismic shift that's happening is based on AI nativeness. Right, because that creates more productivity, like you also mentioned. It helps in hiring, quick as well. But at the same time, a lot of times in a startup's life, we are running against the clock because cash is everything, right? So having AI to sort of speed up those processes helps us to build much better, build faster, and deploy to the world sooner. So, yeah. Yes, well, Hobby Tribe, we enable adults, millennials, and Gen Zs to pursue their interests and hobbies again. So in the workspace, rather than doing the same yoga, Zumba, fitness that's always happening in employee experience and engagement, we've enabled adults to pursue more than 100,000 different hobbies in their corporate offices across the world and across India as well. So yeah, employees are dancing and singing and acting and cooking and stuff like that within corporate offices. We use AI a lot for that as well. Yeah, well, I was excited to hear that so many of the panel members are pro AI, because that's kind of the future. And I feel like even someone said that they use the word AI a lot, to sort of get in there. And I feel like AI is the future. Anyone that's trying and go on the left or right towards it, somewhere down the line, if not today, you're going to use it. The only thing is, AI is going to get more expensive later on. So if you're doing it today, you're saving a lot, because VCs are spending a lot of money right now to subsidize costs for you guys. So take it up as soon as you can. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the audience? We just have the last 5 minutes left. Thanks. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, everyone. This was really, really an interesting panel to hear about. I have one question, though, and this is a follow-up from the earlier panel discussion and this one combined together. So the question that I had, and this is for anyone and everyone who can answer to this. We've heard a lot of organizations today advocate psychological safety. We spoke about mental well-being of employees. And yet we are simultaneously moving to AI for analyzing employee behavior, driving engagements, productivity as well. So how do we bridge this paradox? And while we ensure that AI strengthens all these aspects for us, it does not erode the employee trust.
I think it's a beautiful question talking about psychological safety and very well timed given where we live in, right? Trust is such an important topic. What I've seen organizations do well is really invest in building a charter. Think of AI as a tool, not replacing you, but something which will help you, right? Like I spoke about job enrichment, elevate the human experience, the customer experience, if you will. And that's very important. In my experience, I've seen people not applying AI because I don't trust and I don't know. When you address the trust part, topics around responsible AI, you put together a charter like you suggested. You're as HR, communicating that this is the charter, this is where AI is getting used, this is how we'll use it to analyze, there will be a human in the loop. That fosters the trust part. Some examples of where I've seen companies do well, and Wipro being one among them, is having initiatives in which you actually explicitly call out. For example, when you're recruiting, you call out that yes, the first level interview is with a bot, if you will, right? So you know the psychological safety is being addressed. Even during the COVID period, which we all of has experienced, we've used bots and AI to actually have a conversation. And believe you me, sometimes we as humans, it's much more easier for us to confide in a technology, if you will, on the other side, if you will, then really go talk to a peer. It also makes sure that you connect people. You don't have to physically come into a session, if you will. So I've seen lots of great examples, apps such as Wiza, etc., which can really help you build those experiences for psychological safety and well-being. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
So can I take that question from a different perspective? Okay. And sorry, I just need to get some figures. Okay. 2016 to 2024, $1.6 trillion were invested in AI. 2025, 1.7 trillions were invested in AI. And 2026, $2.5 trillion were invested in AI. Capital doesn't get invested without return. For every pie you invest, these are huge capital inflows. Where will the saving come from? Where will corporates save this money from? The answer, unfortunately, is jobs. Okay? Let's face the reality. Okay? $2.5 trillion getting invested, the return has to come from somewhere. So you like it or not, in the next generation, and there was a panel, I think, before this, a very, very important question. What is the message that you're going to Gen Z? My message to Gen Z will be that, or anyone who is having a job now, is that be prepared for a job loss.
I'm sorry, you have to come in because to me this is a bit of a pessimistic perspective.
It's good to have a debate.
No, it's good to have a debate in the spirit of it.
It's supposed to be a debate.
But let's keep the balance in here. I think what the previous session was, be prepared to use it as a tool. Not
or upskill rather.
Exactly.
One second, let me just address that. So, okay, let me just complete my point of view. So be prepared for a job loss. Okay, 1 in 2 employees or 1 in 3 employees will have a job loss. It will be part of a normal career routine. As a generation, our generation, we were not exposed to job loss as a normal career routine. This will become part. What should individuals do? That becomes very important. as individuals, let's face the reality and let's always and constantly upskill ourselves and make us ready for the next wave of change. That is important. As an organization, organizations will do what is right for its returns and for its shareholders. Right now, organizations are important, the return to shareholders is important, hence mental well-being is important, psychological safety is important. They will take care of their critical employees. And if you are a magnanimity employee, then you'll take care of all the employees. That's a reality here. But as individuals, let's take our own responsibility. Let's take the destiny of our own life in our hands. Make sure you're upskilled, make sure you're resilient, make sure mentally and emotionally you can face the challenge.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was the great HR debate on is AI a boon or a bane?
Thank you, Tanaya. And
sorry if I upset some people.
No, Prashant, in fact, thank you very much for saying $2.5 trillion spent for disruption, for losing jobs. So we are spending and then we are saying we are ready for the loss of job. What are we heading to? This is from the disruption point of view. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all the panelists for this engaging debate session. A big round of applause. And may I now request Ms. Ruhi Pandey to present mementos to our speakers as a token of our appreciation. To Tanaya Mishra.
Tanaya?
Thank you, Tanaya ma'am, for setting up this session. To Ms. Lucky Kulkarni. Thank you for your valuable time, ma'am. To Ms. Rita Verma. It's a pleasure having you at this debate session. Thank you for being here. To Ms. Harsha Almar. Thank you for being here, ma'am. To Sarita Bhatikar. Thank you for being here, ma'am. It was a pleasure. And to Dr. Prashant Nair. Thank you for your valuable insights and your valuable time. And we have a group photo. You can